funny story. When I became chief customer officer at the BI company, I I literally read a book on the flight to Australia to meet the owner to take the new job on how to be a CCO. So, it's one of those things where you're just like, you just jump in. You're never going to be ready, and you gotta just know you'll figure it out.
The Sales Proformance Show.
Welcome back to the Sales Proformance Show, everybody, and I am super pumped about our guest today. This is a great, great story. Lee Roquet of Finch Marketing Services is the CEO. And he's gotten to this point. This is a great story. He actually was VP of Client Services for the company and then moved into the CEO role. And he's going to tell his story today about the transition over the last year of moving into that role, some of the things that he really learned, his team leadership, his style, and more importantly, if any of you out there are trying to level up into a role, or you are leveling up in a role, or you have leveled up in a role, and you want to hear a great story on the things to do, this is the show you're going to want to listen to. So Lee Roquet, thanks for being here today. I want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, David, yeah, I'm excited. We had such a fun time just chatting kind of before the show. So yeah, no, I'm excited to get into some questions, share my journey with, hopefully it resonates with someone and offers any confidence or support to either take that next step or share knowledge.
Amen. It's going to be great, man. So the company that you're the CEO is Finch Marketing Services. You do a lot with e-commerce. We'll talk more about that as we go along. But give our listeners a little bit of background, before we dive into this transition and this opportunity and all this great stuff.
Yeah, no, glad to. So yeah, my background is kind of 25 years in the software space and really focused on kind of enterprise level media management software for radio, TV, cable, broadcasting side of things. Spent quite a bit, about 15 years in that space, just trying to help radio, TV, cable stations manage their inventory, and then jumped over to another company that was very focused on just editing software for TV stations in the U.S. Super high stress. Don't ever want to do that again. And then after that, I was able to go do a startup where I was head of marketing as well as operations. So I've kind of always had an operations role in the companies that I've worked at. I kind of learned early on that if you had your hands in the business systems that ran the business, you tended to be able to at least have a higher vote of where you wanted things to go. And I've always been in a position where I've been post-sale for a lot of my career.
Yeah.
And just really focused on customer journey, customer success. So once I did the startup, it was kind of the first time to really be in charge of a brand and marketing and kind of getting things going and managing pro teams and looking at how to message correctly on all the social channels. But then also just, again, I was employee number one in this great company called Decked. And so we had a super fun time building something from scratch. And that was a great journey. And then after that, I moved over to work at a BI company for about 9 years. Okay. And stepped in as chief customer officer. So being able to be employee number 30 in this little company in Melbourne, Australia. And we grew it to about 180 people in 5 offices globally. And we had a really, really fun time building a fun brand, and then sold that. And then I was fortunate enough to meet the team here at Finch, and they were in a transition of being a 15-year-old agency that had built a technology within the company to help their CSMs improve the output and growth for their customers. And so the goal was to bring on some people to help from moving from an agency to a software company. And so I came over as VP of client services, and with the goal to help build out an actual support team for supporting software, which is very different than supporting managed services for an e-com company. So
what is the big? I'm going to cut in here. What's the biggest difference that you see? Because there's companies out there, that are kind of in that mold or that transition. What is the biggest difference you see in that?
comparing like a services agency versus a software company.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I think you know, for the agency, I mean, you're outsourcing people expertise, right? So it's a really hands-on, uh, people led, and really trying to make sure that you're that trusted advisor. And so it's just a really different model. And honestly, the contracts, the churn rates, the trust factor, that all of the things that kind of lead to what I was shocked coming from the
Yeah.
software world is, it's, if you had 7 or 8% churn annually, you were like, oh my god, like what are we doing to fix
Yeah.
this? And now
Right.
coming over to the agency side of things, it's like, oh, 30-40% churn, that's kind of normal. I'm like, oh my god. And so digging into that piece has been a big part of why we're retooling and have relaunched a new software to kind of
Right.
address that for customers. But I think again, it's people led versus software led. Software sales is very different. It's longer agreements. You're solving people problems in a different way. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so getting to learn that, and then just not have come from the, I guess, the agency space as my background, having to learn a lot about, again, we're trying to help a brand get to a vision, to get to their goals, understand how we can be a better partner to help them scale and grow. And so, there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of expectation settings that have to be done early on. And so it's a bit of a different, it's very different, but I've also learned it's very much at the core. Again, we're coming back to people helping people, this concept that, we're trying to solve those problems to make people's dreams come true. When, I love working with these, good little size company that has, whatever, 25 employees, and they're trying to grow and scale. And you really become, you have to kind of look at it as like, man, we're helping them, have more jobs and hit their goals and be able to live their lifestyles. And so that's really how, that's the piece that it's much more, it's much more personal, I think, on the agency side, because we have to be an extension of their team. And so I guess that's the piece that's been, that relationship, once it goes a little south, people have to shift. And so trying to stop that has been the thing that I've been trying to put
the
finger on.
identifiers. That's great. All right, I'm going to shift gears. Right? Okay, you were in the executive customer support role. When did you find out, or tell me the moment when you learned that you were offered or stepping into the CEO role, and what was your initial reaction when it all happened? Yeah.
So, and I guess just to kind of preface this too, I came in to help with the shift, and I think anybody who's tried to pivot a business, it's not easy. Like, best intentions, and the founders were very passionate, and they had built a really nice business, and just trying to make an agency a software company, that's not easy. And so,
Yes.
I just want to be really respectful to that piece, coming in with fresh eyes and being able to see, a lot of, it really could be a Harvard Business Review of all the things you really should not do to rebrand and launch a company. So, and Finch was basically supported by a PE firm. And as we were kind of looking at the go-to-market and trying to launch something, and it just became very apparent to me that, the product, where it wasn't going to be able to solve the problems that were going to let it be successful. And so I'd actually started a transition out of the organization, just trying to, because I just saw the kind of a little bit of the writing on the wall that this is just not going to be successful. And then, the PE firm, the head of the PE firm, called me and just said, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna leave. I think that's the best thing for me." So we ended up having a discussion on what needed to change, and and then they, as the owners of the company, decided to make the shift. So,
Wow.
my first initial reaction when, go ahead.
So sorry to cut him, but you were gonna, like, based on the direction and things that were going, you're like, man, this is just not working. I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna transition. Here's the other thing. clear on communication. You had to have been very clear on communication. And I think if anybody's out there and they might be in that position, sometimes in a situation like that where it's maybe not so positive, you can turn this into a positive.
Mhm.
And I think your open communication with them was a real reflection of that. So I just wanted to touch on that for anybody listening. Don't be scared to voice your opinion or what you're going to be doing, because if it's worth really turning around or giving you an opportunity like you had to step into a larger role with more of an impact in certain areas, then all for it. But okay, so now I'm sorry I had to cut in
No,
on that.
no, and I think that's a really good, again, you can kind of have two paths, right? You can sit and complain, which
Yeah,
I was super vocal on, like, guys, this isn't going to work. Like, you've fallen in love with the problem so bad that you didn't even listen to your own team or customers, or this product is just, it's not going to work. Like, it was not great. And so being able to voice that, but then not being heard, it's like, well, then I'm not being effective as a
no,
leader. I need to leave. So, having that decision internally, like, it's either a good place or a bad place. And
yeah,
you kind of have to, chart your own path. So I guess being able to talk to the PE firm and say, this is what needs to happen. This is what's going to happen. And they're, invested. And so then, long story short, they offered me the role. And at first I said no. I'm like,
okay,
nope. I'm a good second. I'm an operations person at heart.
yeah,
Like, my idea in my head of what a CEO is, I had I don't know, put them on a pedestal and kind of was
yeah,
thinking, like, wow, there's no way. Like, I'm not that person. So I said no, but I will love to step into more of an operations role and really help the company, and we can restructure and do all that. But then it was funny. I said no, hung up the phone, and I really thought the night about, and talked to a couple friends and my wife, and so I can't remember who said this, but they're like, "What do you actually love?" And I'm like, "I love the work. I love fixing things. I love problem solving. I love building great teams." And
yeah,
everyone's like, "Well, that's just do that." I'm like, yeah, and then I'm like, "Man, what do I have to lose? Like, what's if it
yeah,
doesn't work?" I mean, and no disrespect to, or I want to be very respectful to.
yeah, of course.
I've learned a lot about being in this role for just over a year now. Have a tremendous respect for how hard it is to be a CEO and a founder
Hard.
and build something. So, don't want to. I want to make sure that comes across, because it was like, okay, I didn't really have a lot to lose in this sense. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll say it would be nice to build something from scratch and have scaled that versus taking over something that had a 15-year culture of a bit really hard 5 or 6 years of downward kind of trajectory. But I think for me, I woke up that morning after thinking about it, and I'm like, why not me? Why not?
Yeah, right?
I've built, I've scaled, I've been in roles where I'm like, okay, I'll do marketing. I've never done it, but I'm going to figure it out. So then I called him up and I said, okay, let's do this. I'm on board.
Great,
And
great.
so yeah, I think it was the realization, I will admit, the first probably 4 months, I had imposter syndrome for sure. Like,
Yeah,
which
it
is it's and I've talked to quite a few. It's been really good to have a collection of kind of surrounding yourself with other people who've done the things you're trying to do. And so being able to talk to some CEOs and just validate, like, it's it's hard, it's scary. You don't realize how tough it is until you sit in the seat,
yeah.
and how much stress there is, and everybody's looking at you for all the answers. Um, and so
It's so true.
that's been hard to kind of get through the first probably 6 months.
Yeah, I want to
But
touch on this too. I want to
yeah,
cut in here, okay? Because
yeah,
you said some really good stuff here. One, imposter syndrome is real. I've had it. It's one of those things. Um, and but you said something about surrounding yourself with people who
mm,
have been in this role. And I
yeah,
don't want to, I don't want to overstep that point, because if there, we all can learn, and
yeah,
the company you keep is going to help you elevate your game. That's
yeah,
really what it comes down to. And it's okay not to have the answers. That's why and believe it or not, the CEOs or the people who are heading things up, someone helped them along the way,
yeah,
and they want to help too,
yeah,
right? And I think that's just a good point that I want to draw out of that, what you just said. So,
No, and God, it's been amazing because as you kind of reflect, like, okay, it's been a year. What have I learned? What are the,
yeah,
God,
what did you learn?
hindsight is just, oh man, I think the biggest thing two biggest things I've learned.
Yeah.
One, I thought that I had to, and I had to take the team I had, and that was the only option I had. So I think for me, looking at it now, I should have backed up and said, well, what am I trying to build?
Yeah.
What are the roles I need? What's the structure I need? What do I really need to build a world-class agency or software company or whatever?
Yes.
And then kind of look at what I had versus, okay, we're all in this together, go rah rah, we'll create a great culture. And realizing 6 months in that I had a couple people, great people, wrong role, wrong seat, right? And so
Yes.
being able to look at that and go, man, I should have made those changes faster, or that's probably the biggest thing, lesson learned.
Yeah.
But I
Great.
also, I
Great
had a couple,
by the way.
sorry.
No, that was fantastic feedback. Put your plan together, identify the people you have, play to their strengths. If their strengths don't match up, make the adjustments you need. I think that's a great insight, great learning lesson.
And then just, you gotta, especially, I guess, if you're, well, I think at any level, if you're self-funded or being funded by someone else, like, you gotta rip the Band-Aid off and make quick decisions. Like, you have to address, and I heard somebody, I was reading the No Rules from the Netflix founder, and I have a great mindset around, because you go into it like, we're a family and we're going to just stick together and we're going to move Bob all over the company because he just doesn't fit anywhere anymore. But that concept of, like, you're actually a team, and just like a football team or a soccer team,
This is a team.
you're going to sub people in and out to give you the best chance to win. And so that kind of concept of, like, man, like, we had a couple people who were like critical. They've been here 10 years and they, like, knew all the skeletons in the closet, but it's like, but they weren't doing a good job. And so the fear of actually making that change is, I think that was the second of the issues.
Yeah.
It's just like, once there's a problem, you got to address it.
Yeah, world-class team, and that's a difference. And I think that has changed. I've heard that, and I read it, and then I heard it. I haven't read the book yet, but I read an excerpt of it, and he did say, like, we are trying to build an all-star team. We're not, like, this isn't a family thing. This is a all-star team, and if you've got somebody who's weak, why are we waiting? It's going to be terrible for them. It's going to be terrible for us. Like, let's just cut it off. And I thought that was a real interesting approach. And and
I think, there's a right way to do it. And,
sure, of course.
Yeah. And
it's not just that, but yeah.
No, and I think it's funny. I've read 3 books this last month. They're all kind of in this theme, and it's holy arc. I'm a big fan of, like, self-management, hire great people, get the hell out of the way. And I don't want to be, I said this first day, I don't want to be the leader at the top where everything's funneled through. I'm going to fall over dead. I want to empower. I want people I want the team across the globe here to be communicating up and telling their stories and their voice and held accountable. And I think, creating that culture of empowerment, accountability, that's the place that I want to work. Right. Yeah. And so now it's finding the people that want that as well.
What are the 3 books you've read over the last, like, 3 books, man? Like, it takes me 3 months to read 3 books. You've read 3.
I know. I've been so I've read, let's see, the Traction. I'm kind of trying to kind of get into the EOS, the
EOS
concept
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Holyarchy book on, it's kind of a self-management, a lot of the same concepts as Traction.
Okay.
But it's about empowering your teams to own the issues and friction within your business. And then you become coach, mentor versus always having to be the person at the top. And so same thing. And then actually, I just read this. I read The Reputation King, because I have a good relationship with DJ over at Shopper Approved. And so just kind of figuring out how the best way to look at utilizing your reputation to drive more loyalty within your organization, or within your brand.
Love it. So it's great for our listeners out there to pick some stuff up like that. I think it's great. So now you've got, so over the last year, you've kind of honed in your team, right? And yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
still working on that. Well, I think
progress.
the first 3 to 4 months, like I was kind of probably leaning on a couple people that unfortunately were also kind of not the right people in the company, and so I think me finally getting to a place, and it took 4 months or so to go. All right, one, the mystique of like, okay, CEO, and what's that mean? Um, Kind of realizing like it's just a title, and the goal is to build a great team, operationalize everything, make the business so it can scale. And so really that's, again, I've kind of gotten to this good place where I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable in the role now, and I see what needs to happen. Um,
How did you, I want to cut in here. How did you build, so you have two things going on here, right? You've got your team trust and then you've got the stakeholders trust, right?
yeah.
So how did you approach building the trust with your team and obviously the stakeholders in, this new relationship and maybe even the last year, I would say, what are some of the things you've done?
Yeah, it was interesting kind of, yeah, moving into the CEO role and then having your boss be a PE firm. And luckily I have an amazing, I have an amazing boss. He's awesome. And he's a really great coach, mentor,
Great.
and really wants to, he wants to see us succeed, which is great. But yeah, I'd say that was probably the biggest shock was the amount of effort and work that I have to put in to encourage and excite and make people like not in the organization happy and excited about continuing to invest, is that was eye opening. Yeah, funny story. Kind of day two of I get announced as CEO, and I'm like, okay, great, we've got a team, we're gonna build, blah blah, and
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like that piece of it, like building teams and getting people excited. That was fine. I was like, give me game on. We'll operationalize. We'll make things better. We'll empower people, and we'll build that culture. Day two, I get told, uh, well, we're thinking about maybe selling, so we're going to start due diligence. so, so day two, I'm like, all right, here I am trying to build a company, and now I have to do all the due diligence with, yeah. So that was kind of like that was a lot, that first 2 months of like, and then we finally decided that we didn't want to sell because I was able to kind of, and then on the behind the scenes of that, I'm trying to put together the 12-month value like positioning. So the PE firm is like,
Right.
do we want to invest in you in the future? Do we have anything? Is the, because it'd been 5 years of promises on a product that never sailed. So I had to do a lot of work to go, we have something here. We have a great team. We're good at what we do. We just are terrible at marketing our own value. And then we have a product that actually retooled. So
Yeah,
yeah, so that was kind of like,
so day two, they're like, hey, and that now you're scrambling to get them all the information they need.
totally.
Right? And you're
Yeah.
like, it might have worked out to your benefit because you're probably lifting up a lot of rocks very quickly, very early
Yes.
to understand the guts of the organization. I mean, not that you didn't have an understanding of that prior, but man, you're really getting an overview of what's going on.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, and then unwinding, there was a lot of financial things that had to get fixed and
yeah,
cleaned up, and there was some, creative things that had been done in the past that were like, yeah, we had. So, you were probably right. It probably getting thrown in like to the deep end day two was probably the best thing that could have happened. But man, it was just like I didn't sleep very much the first 4 months.
sure, sure.
but But
Uh,
I think as I get through this year, and I was looking back, so yeah, I wish I would have, I wish I would have made some decisions faster, but also I wish I would have built out the kind of team structure. But I also, part of me is like, well, don't be so hard on yourself, because we also had to like figure out what we had.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. I think there's such a balance with that because one, you don't want to get rid of good people, and if you don't
No,
really identify their capacity, their ability, their skill set, their knowledge, then you're just kind of punching water. I mean, you could lose some good people that could
oh
be
yeah,
advantageous,
and
and then sometimes you keep people around who might not be, but you've got to give them that chance. I think
totally.
the right way. Yeah. I
No,
think,
and I think too, now that I've been at 4 or 5 companies now, there's always that problem. And I think it's just something people do is like, maybe you don't have the money to give people raises. So you start giving people titles, or you
yeah.
start moving people around because you don't want to deal with the issue. And so, you've created these, like a lot of what we had to do the first 6 months was like, man, standardize roles, standardize the pay scale, standardize the bonus program, standardize the commissions, like all of that. It's so funny because I've had to do that multiple times now at companies. It's like everybody kind of has this thing like, start with building the model first and then put people in the right roles versus just like randomly putting, but as you go from like, a startup with 5 or 6 people and everyone's wearing 14 hats.
Yes.
That's just kind of what happens. But, I think cleaning that up and looking at, do I have the right people in the right seats? And then, yeah, you're right. Like there's just been a couple people like my head of product, like, yeah, I love telling the story because he's he's very Irish and very embarrassed. He gets very, very embarrassed if you talk anything about him. But literally, we announce I'm CEO.
Yeah.
Before I even get back to my desk, I have an email from him in my inbox saying, we need to talk. I'm like, okay, great. First person problem that I got. Get on the phone with him. And he is just like, this is why I was hired. I was promised, it never happened, but this is my passion and where I want to go. And I've been in the software space my whole life, and he has been like the best product manager. Like the guy is just amazing, detail oriented, doing competitive analysis. He gets everything about the space. Like couldn't be a better. He writes the best manuals, does videos well. He teaches great. Like he is a unicorn. And I'm just like, I just love that. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the culture that I want. I'm like, people like, if raise your hand, you see a problem, let's fix it together. Like,
Yeah.
don't complain, fix it. Like, and I'm empowering you to do that. And to have like some people go, I want that, and that's the thing that I love. I love seeing people just get excited to come into work today because they're empowered to do some great stuff.
Yeah, and I know I'm calling out the obvious here, but I can't stress this enough. If someone's trying or is motivated to move into a larger role with their organization or even running an organization, but empowering your team to really find solutions before they come to you with problems. Listen, I'm all for challenges or problems, but
Yeah.
just don't come to me with that problem. I want a solution on what you think that should be the best route.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah.
And that's a great, even on the flip side, as a leader like yourself, sometimes it's conditioning the team. One thing I did when I was with the one startup I had, I mean, again, you start by doing everything. And then as you grow, you learn that you're only going to grow if you start
Yeah.
delegating things. And I remember for a while there in the first couple of years, I wanted to just handle like I had to have my hand in it. And I'm like,
I'm
wait,
struggling right now.
yeah, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest? That was one thing that started coming out of my mouth a lot.
Oh, it's funny because reading like the traction book from Gino Wickman and this concept, because since I've always been operations problem solving, I have a hero complex. I want to be in everything. I want to read everything. And that's probably one of my downfalls. I want to help. And so coming from that, in the book, they talk about being the visionary versus the integrator, right? So you're those are the two roles, that you want within your company, and you want people who are driving forward thinking to have time to be a visionary. And so for me, being able to realize that I can't empower the organization to be better if I'm not spending the time to work on the business versus in the business. Like I have to break all my bad habits. And it's funny now that I'm kind of clued into that I need to stop that. I can see my middle layer leaders, they are all doing the same thing. Like I have some amazing people who are so smart at what they do, but they're playing the hero role with their teams.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're focused on right now is like, look, do we have the right players? And if we have the right players on, at the kind of the base level, I guess, are they able to do their job? Do they know what to do? And are they empowered? If they are, you shouldn't have to micromanage them. You shouldn't have to have them, you shouldn't have to be jumping in to save everything all the time. like trying to get this shift from middle management and upper management to like coach, mentor, facilitator of of empowerment for the larger team is kind of where
Yeah.
that's right where we're at,
Great.
and we're
That's
having
a
some
great
really
way.
great discussions, and when we're having to make some hard decisions. And so we're just kicking off this week. We're going back to square one, which is, yeah, look, if I could start the role tomorrow, this is what we would have done. But we're going back to all the job descriptions, and we're making sure every single job description has the way we're going to track and their key metrics. And that's going to ladder up to the scorecard for that department, scorecard for the division, scorecard for the senior business, because I'm at a place where I want to be able to make sure that the people that are accountable for our book of business for our customers or marketing metrics, they're telling us weekly, here's what I'm doing, here's what I want to do, here's my blockers. How can I, I'm being successful, look at my scorecard, but also I need your help. Like that's the shift in mindset that is exciting right now, because that's happening right now.
Yeah, here's where we need to fill the gaps, and that's a big important piece of that. So let's talk a little bit, because you talked about retooling the product. Obviously, at first you're like, man, this there's things that need to be done. You identified that, so now you've retooled the product. You're on a trajectory up, and was that obviously that was a combination of working things we're talking about right now, working with the team and moving this thing, because you had to move it quick. I mean, you've got to retool and you got to put something out there that's
we had to take a product that was, and again, it's and it was funny. I read, and I'm totally spaced. Oh, it was "Fall in Love with the Solution, Not the Problem" from I forgot his name, the guy from Wise. Anyway, great book.
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna start a software company and you haven't read that book, go read that book. But the whole premise is, and I think this happens a lot, is you tend to fall into
Yuri Levine. That's who it was. Yeah.
Yes, that one. Oh man,
Yeah.
and
It was on my mind too.
Yeah, so many good things in there of like, please, please, please take the time to validate what it is you're actually going to build. And so, and I think the problem that we had at Finch is we had a very passionate CTO who was a bit of an introvert, and we had a very passionate CEO who was in the space for 40 years, but they fell in love with the problem they wanted and thus built something in a closet by themselves. I mean, literally our CTO would go code over the weekend and change the product and just launch it on Monday and not tell anybody. And so it got to this thing where, if you want one thing, I'm going to code you 100 things. So it's just this, it was a really tough thing to do. And so looking at that going to market, so I think I literally day one stopped all development. We stripped out probably 70% of the functionality, because it was just not solving the actual problem for the team. And that's kind of where we've started with. We're building a software solution for brands and agencies. And as an agency, we're like, how do we make ourselves better? So that's kind of what I went to our PE firm, and I'm like, look, our number one objective. So I had to do like why don't we just go get all these other, systems out there? And why are we building our own? So that was the first 4 months of like justifying a dev team and putting this money into actually building something. And so luckily we were able to go, look, we have something here. It would cost us, let's say $800,000 to go buy all these systems, because we built the system
right, and do all that.
Yeah, and so really it just came down to, okay, well, how do we make this? How do we make the UI, the visualization, the experience for the end user amazing? And so, in 10 months, we retooled, reskinned, and launched the product, which was amazing. With a team of only 4 people, we did a lot. But the thing that actually, kind of back to something you said earlier, is like surrounding yourself with great people. I mean, one of the things that it was funny. I just kind of realized this about a month ago. I'm like, God damn, I have a really amazing kind of advisory board that I've kind of just, with friends that I've worked with. I've got a great fractional CTO. I got a great fractional CMO, got a great fractional CRO. I've got a great fractional COO and CXO, of just people that have just either we've gravitated to each other or I've known for 5-10 years. And so being able to have this kind of fractional support group has been amazing, because it's just, you need someone to go, that's stupid. Don't do that and do this. So I think that that idea of just, and I would, I would say, as starting something is just that find the fractional like group that can really help you. If you're scaling and you're like, doing, wearing too many hats, having that, having the ability to bring some people in who've just done it before,
Yeah.
is, you can't put a price tag on that.
You can't. You just it speeds up the process, and you'll develop trust very quickly. And I think that's such a great point. It really is.
And the credibility too, I think internally, like I think you asked the
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
earlier about how do you get the internal team to buy into this new guy and
Right. Right.
customer. And I think, for me, it was just being very honest and upfront. And I, I I definitely am not the smartest person in the room, and nor do I want to be, and nor do I want people to think that they can't, you know, um, raise their hand and say, "I don't agree." Great, let's have that discussion, because I'm not saying I'm going to answer, have all the answers, but I think also me being willing to be a bit vulnerable in that front, but then putting things in place that allowed a voice with someone with expertise that was on the outside. So bringing able to bring people in to go, all right,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer, but this person's bought and sold and created 10 agencies, and they have some wisdom here, or know someone who does. Helped, I guess, break down that I'm willing to find the problem anywhere in the organization. And if it's not here, then maybe we go look outside. Um, and so I think
Yeah,
that was
correct
kind
me
of,
if I'm wrong. When we talk, you do a lot with fractional.
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, because you were very positive when we spoke the first time about bringing in some fractional people with an outside-in approach, which I love, because when my organizations were growing at their fullest,
Mhm.
I had somebody working with me on the out who was on the outside looking in, because sometimes you're in the weeds and you just can't see these things. And then all of a sudden you bring somebody in and go, "Oh, we'll just do this." And you go, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" Right. But anyway, it's bigger than that. But more importantly, give us your feedback and your experience with that.
Yeah, and I think there's been positives and negatives. Like,
Sure.
I mean, like anything, right? If you hire somebody, they could look awesome on their resume, and you get them there in the first couple weeks, and they're just like, "Oh my god, culturally just not a fit." I think for me, I needed some outside voices, because one, I don't have 25 years experience in the agency space. I didn't know how good we were at what we did.
That's
Like,
great.
and so I think I just needed to pay the 10 grand to have somebody come in and tell me if my baby's ugly, and if we're not good at what we do, or are we? Because I just didn't even know how much to push. Like, let's start saying, like, like, we're good at this. Because
Yeah.
it seemed like the company was embarrassed to talk about themselves. So for me, I mean, just having that outside voice was just so important. Like,
Great.
I think our biggest thing is we're a marketing company that just doesn't really do a lot of marketing for ourselves. So having a outside CMO come in and go,
It's great.
well, you're confusing your audience, and your tone on your website is shitty. And this is, you guys are awesome, but you suck at your, so having that third party. And I did the same thing just across the board. And, and the other thing that's been really helpful too is, and it took me a while to kind of get here, but like, I don't know, even, I think it was a month ago or so, I got an executive coach, because honestly, I mean, it's, again, and it's, until you're actually in the seat, it's really hard. It's like,
Yeah.
you feel like, yeah, you have imposter syndrome, or you feel like a failure, or the pressure is daunting, and some of the things you have to do. So I think being able to be okay with going, I need some help, some
Yeah.
coaching,
Good.
some support is okay as well, because it is a very tough place to be, especially when you're juggling. You got to keep your global team going. You got to make sure that all the finances are going. You got to deal with customer, and still getting pulled in too many directions
Yeah.
to you
Yeah.
know take a vacation, but then also like managing your PE firm, and it's just like, there's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you really are taking on a lot. And I really, again, I took this away from our first conversation, and this has been such a great show because you're really, you're a year in, you've learned a lot. I'd love to have you back on down the road in like a year from now too, to
Yeah.
talk about, the next level, because it takes time. Listen, it takes time to understand that. But before we go, I'm asking a few more questions, but what advice would you give a leader who's going through a transition or an opportunity like this in their career? I mean, if there was any, one or two things you could tell them, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, firstly, I mean, if you're kind of a person, and I guess that, depending on if you've always been the kind of, I've always been like, game on, I'll learn that, or I'll step up, or I always liked Black Ops. I would just do stuff in the back and then get apologized if it went left.
Yeah.
I just always liked, figuring that out. I guess if you're given the opportunity, you're never going to be ready. You just have to go, game on. I'm into that. I mean,
Yeah.
funny story, when I became chief customer officer at the BI company, I literally read a book on the flight to Australia to meet the owner to take the new job on how to be a CCO. So, it's one of those things where you're just like, you just jump in. You're never going to be ready, and you gotta just know you'll figure it out.
Great.
And I think,
Great advice.
yeah, I think that's, it's like, take the opportunity, because honestly, I mean, life is about stretching, and you're not going to grow if you don't challenge yourself. And, I think, yeah, I mean, there's,
Right.
there's yeah. Anyway, I
Yeah,
would just say,
the unknown. I love it. I think
yeah,
it's a gem of advice. All right, one more question for you.
yeah.
What's on the vision for Finch Advertising Services moving forward? What's exciting you the most right now?
So what I'm excited most about is I've basically created a Boathouse Media Group is
Okay.
the name of our media group. And so we are actually in the process of splitting out our agency division. And our goal is to do roll-ups. It's very popular right now, looking
Yeah,
at bringing together 5 or 6 agencies, because honestly, there's a lot of amazing people who've grown a really successful little business, and they want to move to the next thing, but we all can't. We don't have so coming together. So I'm really excited to create an environment where I can find some really killer people who do a specialty, and they just want to do that, but they want to be part of something bigger. So that's one piece. And then we are literally rebranding our software. It's called Volare, and I just got off a call actually just with the branding team and so we spent 3 hours like talking about like, oh, what's it going to be and who's it going to go for? So then that division is going to launch here in January. And so yeah, being able to now hopefully elevate myself to spend more time with Boathouse Media and really look at helping to build and scale an agency. I have big plans to be like, hundreds of millions of dollars in agency services and solve problems for brands and really bring some great people together. And then I'm excited to build a kind of a software company from the ground up. I think that's going to be super fun in the next 12 months.
fantastic. Listen, Lee, this has been fantastic. What a great interview. You really shed some great light on this transition. And I mean, I'm going to have you back down the road because
I'm glad to be back, David. This is fun.
Yeah, I'd really love to have you back and talk about the next transition. So, Lee, listen, thanks for being here. I am your host, Dave Slime. Listen, check this show out. Salesproformance.com is our website. Check us out on YouTube. Like this show, share this show. I'm the host, and Lee here was the chief customer officer, and now he's the CEO. And this guy is doing a fantastic job transitioning in. And I loved your insight today, and I appreciate you being here. And where can people check you out if they have questions? Maybe there's somebody who needs some mentorship from you, or check your company out as well.
Yeah, no, glad to share my knowledge and experience and help in any way I can. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can go to leeroquet.com and that'll connect you to me and my LinkedIn profile. Yeah, if you want anybody out there need any marketing or whatever help, you can go to finch.com. But here to support. I'm always a big sponge on learning and growing, and so I'll learn just as much talking to anyone else. So I really, David, this has been awesome. Love sharing my story, and thanks for having me on it.
Neighbors, man. I mean, it wasn't
right.
This way. It really isn't. It was not planned this way. But yeah, we'll get together sometime after this for sure. Yeah.
That would be great.
All right. Thanks for being here, man.
No,
all right, everybody, listen. Health, wealth, success to all of you. Again, like the show, share. We appreciate all your support, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
The Sales Proformance Show.